won't be able to join us today, so I'll be giving his report. Just to make sure everyone knew that. Before we get into all of that though, can I do roll call? So CB1, CB2,
Present.
CB3,
Present.
CB4,
Present.
CB5,
Present.
CB6,
Present.
CB7,
Present.
CB8, I know Valerie's on her way, CB9,
Present.
CB10.
Present.
Always good to see you, Marquise. Xavier told me he's on his way as well, so CB11 will be coming, and I don't see CB12, so but we have quorum and we're able to get started. First off, can I get a motion to adopt our meeting agenda?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Then after that, can we get a motion to adopt the last month's meeting
So moved.
minutes? 1 second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you so much, I appreciate it. I have a fairly brief report with some stuff that I really want to make sure that I highlight on behalf of the borough president. So first off, we are continuing to add more bodies to your board. So hopefully you have seen, I know CB4 just has a new member, CB3 as well. We were really happy to get Stephen on board. CB5 got a couple, CB8 just received one as well. So we are doing our best to continue to fill seats. As I mentioned before, some of them are council member nominations, so we're just waiting to hear back from them and get some options in order to move forward. But for the most part, I think we're making some headway there. So thanks for your patience with that. Other thing that I wanted to mention is you should be getting something, if not tomorrow, then certainly Monday, the latest, by way of our leadership training series. So that's going to be starting up October 28th through November 1st. We have just finalized 7 trainings that are going to take place. So I think most of you are already aware of this, but we host this leadership training series to continue to provide, build up of skills and expertise in certain areas to promote all the work that you do on the board. We host these both in evening sessions and lunchtime sessions. It worked out for us where there's this 5th week, so we don't really expect to have any committee meetings or full board meetings that can be a conflict. So just to highlight some of the ones that we have going on, we of course are going to have our mandatory sessions. Those are equal employment opportunity, conflict of interest board, and an implicit bias training. So those 3 are mandatory, but we also have some really interesting ones. Again, hopefully they help with the work that you do. So we're going to have a training from Beta NYC on how to access and use open data in order to better serve you for your district need statements, for addressing quality of life concerns, et cetera. And we've held a number of trainings that we continue to hold, but one new one that we're going to have that I'm really excited about is we're going to have a housing finance session. That's going to be held in collaboration with NYU's School of Real Estate. And they're really going to talk about like what getting a project through looks like. And the affordable housing finance, pools of money that it goes through, like what is the process? I think that's really important for, I feel like most of you here are seasoned vets at this point, but especially for newer members. And, I've been trying to look at this with the lens of term limits in the next few years and making sure that folks are aware of all the things that go into, the ULERT process, which we also do a basic land use and zoning training. I think it's just really helpful and highlights so that folks have that information going forward. Yes.
Will there be recordings so people can go back?
There will.
Thank you.
Yeah, so
Very
all of these will be recorded and they'll be available on our website and then probably soon after on our YouTube page. So all of them, even the ones from last year, are still available. So if there are any trainings that aren't being offered this year that you're interested in, you're always able to check those out too. I'm also hoping to, separately from the leadership training series, but as a standalone training, I'm looking to facilitate a training specifically on how we develop and train new leaders and like identify the skills and like be able to transfer that kind of knowledge and pass it down so that it kind of remains within the organization, again, in that lens of term limits coming up. I want to make sure that we are starting to highlight and promote folks that are, we've been talking about, there are some people who are coming on with limited expertise into some boards with turnover. So I think it's really important that we just work on how we transfer data, how we transfer leadership skills, what we look for. So that'll be another one that's probably going to happen in November, but I just don't have a date for that yet. Any questions about the trainings? Great. Just two other quick things. One is composting. As everyone already knows, our office has been advocating for composting service and greater composting throughout the borough for a while now. We're happy that we're here, but we know that you all have a lot of questions. You're also receiving a lot of questions from residents, building managements and owners, your bids, et cetera, about the process, even what to compost, how to do it, penalties and fines, like all of those questions are still are mostly answered, but it's a little hard for some folks to access them. Our office has a landing page on our website where we have frequently asked questions. We have a nice kind of one pager that we can share out about how composting is supposed to be working. But we are also still, of course, like working alongside DSNY to get them any like specific questions or specific things that you need answers to. So if you have anything on your boards that you want to highlight for me, please send them over. And I'm happy to push DSNY as much as I can to assist on those. And then just one final thing is our office sent a letter related to the NCA capital plan. I'm not sure if folks have already seen that, but we are highlighting some possible gaps in the NCA capital plan that we wanted to make sure that we filled. So we talked about the need for more accessibility at stations, of course, which we've seen scaled back. The need for screen doors, other items. We've also been highlighting specific stations that have been flagged and have come offline, it seems, from that list. So we'll continue to advocate for these. If you don't have the letter, I will do my best to circulate that as soon as I can. But with that, I think that's for our president's report. Any questions? Yeah.
Term limits, we've set up a kind of an air table of what we understand it to be. Could we send that to you just to make sure we align with the borough president's office?
Yeah, absolutely. Please do. All right. I think with that, I will turn it over to chair reports. It's October, so 10th month, so I will pass it over to my piece.
Okay, I'll be really brief. In the last month, CB10, we're doing we've been having a lot around district needs, so we've been listening a lot and trying to make that accessible to the community. We've had mini surveys, some focus groups, as well as we had a big town hall forum around district needs. So that will be, we're compiling a lot of that information. But some of the key things, of course, for our top 3 issues were affordable housing, public safety, and educational equity for our community. And so, of course, affordable housing is nothing new, and then probably worldwide. But we're really, in the next few months, we're also trying to strategically plan around how we rethink our board. So we are even, we're reimagining our board, but some of this will take place after elections, but we're starting to sit down and restructure, including looking at board committees and are they inclusive of the issues in our community. And so, what I've been doing is also looking at a lot of the boards, Manhattan boards, committee structures. And I've actually learned a lot on your websites and things like that. And there are issues that I think we don't have accounted for that I've seen in other boards that we really want to take a look at. So the goal is that in January, we're trying to restructure committees and we might combine a committee or two so that we can grow more committees. So we're really trying to look at that so we're inclusive of things that we need to go in a new direction. Part of what our board, some of the members have been concerned about is that we're not, I guess in some ways, what they're really trying to say is obviously, we know community boards, we've lost some of our say in certain things, but I think a lot of board members are frustrated often about the lack of accountability with city agencies. We'll write letters, we'll send things, and there's no follow through. And so we're trying to figure out too, on our board, how can we hold, meaning how can we hold ourselves accountable for following up and being up to hold them accountable? Because oftentimes we've written letters, we've called out things, and then we realized 2-3 months later, we've never even got a response to this letter, but no one was even tracking it, right? So we need to we're really trying to build systems, and I think that's part of what we're now focused on now, because the first year of my first term, we had no district manager. So I was going through that and I was managing the office. So now we're kind of restructuring and how vision forward. One of the things, so board members have really expressed a lot of frustration around that. This month, we also had an issue with Columbia University, and DOT had sent us Columbia's a new bus line. They already have a bus line that goes through our community, but they're apparently have another bus line coming that will stop at public bus stops. DOT had asked for public comment, but we had never had a presentation, a report about this, so we were kind of and the deadline was approaching, so we wrote a letter. I think we also shared with the Borough President's office, and that we asked that hold right away, and that Columbia had to come before us, and they did. And so we got a lot more information. We were concerned about the studies around the environment, what kind of buses were these? What was the capacity of these buses? Were they going to be inclusive for community members or elderly members? So there was a lot going on. And so we got a lot of those questions answered. That was a part of accountability. That some of that discussion was, we can't just, how can we yield comment if we've never even had a full report? We also have some issues in our district around 116th Street between Adam Clayton Powell Junior Boulevard, which is 7th Avenue, and Lenox, where we have a huge African migrant population. But we're really concerned about it's nonstop, 24 hours of people just in the streets. And so it's really become a safe haven for that community of West African community. But it is, when I say nonstop, 24 hours of just in the streets. So a lot of people probably don't have residency. There's a lot of things. So we're trying to now create a big coalition with the NYPD. Public safety is an issue, but also just making people feel comfortable, because that is a huge part of our community. But there's real concern about noise, just safety, sanitation. I mean, you can't walk the street sometimes because there's just crowds gathered. And again, that's culturally making people feel comfortable, but we want to figure out how we can have a very sensitive conversation. So we have some new board members who are part of that community too, that we're trying to really build coalitions and figure out how we can address that. We also had a big conversation yesterday with the assistant chief of Manhattan North and all the precincts in our, so that we can kind of sit together and have everyone at the table with that community, so we can figure out some real solutions, even if it means tapping some nonprofit organizations to figure out, do people just not have a place to stay as well? And that's a big thing. And we're also dealing with a lot with our business district, 125th Street, the food delivery, Grubhubs, the bike. It's almost like they have stations on the streets, so there are bikes and everything on some parts of the streets in front of restaurants just constantly. So we're trying to figure out how we can work with that as well. But a lot of that is also tied into the African migrant community that we want to really, so we want to have real conversations around that. That's something we're going to be focused on the next few months. I will also say we did yesterday. I did have a big meeting with all the precincts and the chief of Manhattan North. So we talked a lot about quality of life issues. And what we are now also planning is a big forum for some of the northern part of my district, where we're going to bring together, because there's a lot of drug rehabilitation centers up there. We're trying to figure out having bringing all the major agencies together, because the NYPD also expressed a lot of frustration that they come to our meetings, they report, the chiefs will report, but where are the other city agencies? Because clearly they can't necessarily deal with all of that, and which is absolutely true. And so we're really, again, a lot of our conversations have been about accountability and like building in other agencies to make sure that we have broader conversations to really start being more effective. So I'll leave it there. I think that's enough for now, but that's what we're doing. We also have elections coming up on November, so the day after election day. So
Can I ask you a question?
yes.
How do you do these meetings? Are these meetings open meetings? Are these smaller meetings? I mean, how are you within the context of your existing committees?
So some of them have been, what I've been trying to do is broaden that because everything can't be handled during, some of these are so single issue and that it would take up the entire committee meeting. So we've been building more forums outside in regards to, for instance, the northern part of the district with the drug rehabilitation centers. We had a big community meeting where it affects streets, blocks 128 to 132nd Street came together. We had a Zoom forum for that. So we're trying to do more meetings on Saturdays and Fridays. We're on Zoom though, where we can build in things, but we're also, some parts of our district are more elderly and they want it more in person. So we're trying to figure out, we're really trying to, and I'm using committee chairs though, where the corresponding committees to kind of help coordinate those efforts or members on those committees. Part of what we've also been doing is looking at how do we involve more members, and it's not just the same 12, 15 people running everything, because we want to pull people, thinking about how we get more members involved and engaged.
If you want that, you really do need to bring things to the committee level.
Mhm.
That's how you truly involve more people. That's how you educate more of your board and create more experts.
Mhm.
And one thing I will share is that, my board just every time there's a new issue, the tendency was to create another working group or some. And in the restructuring, one of the things I've learned is that you have to literally look at your calendar. How many days do you have that you can allocate for meetings? I mean, right now we have meetings practically every single day, and that is available to us. And we start with only 4-day weeks because meetings are in the evenings. And then that's before there are holidays or other, things that have to be then taken out. In a way, you have to work backwards, because otherwise we've ended up with two committee meetings on the same date. And then there's pushback because you have to make choices and who gets our conference room. And then there's, reaching out to the community for space. And that's been a huge issue. So yeah, it's a simple logistics thing, but it's not simple.
One thing that I'm also doing in CB10 is that we're trying to take our general community meetings on the road. So the goal of this year is to have at least 3 outside of our focus location, which is in the center of the district. So we kind of split it up. We have one way north, one way south, and somewhere in the central part of the district outside of the normal location, which has been a state office building in Harlem.
Yeah, I know we have the meeting coming up at Canaan Center.
Mhm.
So we used to roadshow, we used to call it around the district.
Mhm.
Our full board was never in the same place twice.
Mhm.
Pre-pandemic, we went and partnered with some of the universities that were here. We helped them at community centers and we helped them at some of the local schools to try and get all the way around, which I personally felt was great because people got out of their little shell of their 10-block radius and moved around the community, which was really nice. It's much harder now. So one of the things that we did was we ended up having to limit down because now you need Wi-Fi because you've got a hybrid component to it. We roadshow, we get on the road, we come down here now for full board, and we do our setup here the same as we would anywhere else. We have our owls, we come, we set up and everything, but we found that we're now limited to places only with technology.
Yeah.
And even if they don't have the cameras and stuff, we have the owls, we've done it like on the mezzanine, as long as you have robust Wi-Fi.
Mhm.
It gets expensive for a community board, and that's something that I wanted to bring back to you, because we have experience of those who donated space to us, those who
They are now
donated tech.
charging.
And we were at Pace one meeting and we gave them 5 to 10 minutes to welcome and talk about, because they gave us the space for free,
Mhm.
which was really nice. But that alone, when we lost our DM, it was like, yeah, we're not going anywhere because just the amount of physical bodies you need. So if you have the owls, I can give you some best case scenarios
Mhm.
about what worked and not for us. But I would say if you can find 3 partners in the community who, like the one you're talking about now, who are willing to host you once a quarter,
Mhm.
that's 9 meetings a year. You're in awesome shape
Yeah.
if you go 3 times to each one.
Mhm.
And so that would be my recommendation, is to try and find those pillars.
Yeah.
And that way people in the community end up knowing, oh yeah, when they come to our area, they're gonna be here. And that also helps drive attendance.
And we were only trying to do 3. We were just because of that, we're not even trying to take, like, constantly rotate. Because also people I feel like it's important to have some type of consistency. But we were just trying to diversify, because there are people who are north in our district who say, well, we never have a meeting up here. But part of what we're looking for is the technology part. And Toro College, at an educational institution, has been the best places.
Yeah.
Because they have all the equipment, honestly, themselves, and they're ready to go. Pull the screen that we have the Zoom there, and everything almost
Yeah.
set up, so. It's not always, even our main location has not been the best location for that sometimes, because the Wi-Fi has not been the greatest. Yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
get that. Sure,
And we've had the same problem. We've gone to the educational institutions. They don't want outside people, especially if it's a contentious issue. They definitely don't want it.
Yeah.
But is there someone we can reach out to assist us to get some of these places?
yeah, so I would say we offered before, if there's any way that, if you're having conversation or just need to be connected to a space, I was gonna say, I've been talking to Marisa at CB5, and I just connected her with Gutman Community College, who was interested in hosting meetings, because I know CB5 recently was trying to find a space, so, however we can be helpful, if you have some locations that you just haven't heard from and you just need us to do that, that's helpful, but if you also just wanna talk through some ideas, I'm available to do that.
Thank you.
Our issue is primarily the financial one. Yes, we
Yes.
have Wi-Fi concerns, and we've tried some places that were disasters from a Wi-Fi perspective. But places that used to be free are no longer free. And one of the reasons put forth for the charges is that under city union contracts, they are required, even if we have our own tech people, they are required to have tech people on site if the building tech is being utilized. So they have to pay the overtime into the evening for our board, and they charge us at least that, if not a lot more.
Right.
So our budget has been really strongly hit by this.
Yeah, and I know that this past cycle, we advocated, you've seen, the comments and the messaging to City Hall about just advocating for more funding. We'll continue to do that. However,
The funding really needs to be targeted, needs to be earmarked for that, because what happens is that we then find other emergency needs, or we have staffing needs, and it's like, this has to be earmarked for, so that people understand what we're dealing with. Even if we bring our own tech, and we've spent money on this, the cost of just bringing it around, and our district manager has become, a big part of his time is spent doing this now.
I'd like also to add, I run a conference center, and, it's a value conference center, which, we have very reasonable rates. But I know from my own experience, you can't just walk in to a donated facility with a couple of valves and expect to get a good result. The acoustics, the Wi-Fi, the union issues, this is a major issue for all of us. It wasn't so important before we had the hybrid requirements, but it requires action.
Yeah.
At the highest level, it's unrealistic. I donate my space for the community board. I'm not allowed to take any payment, right? But the reality is, there's no conference center or, for-profit company, or even the nonprofits. You mentioned the union contracts, people come in, there's the bathrooms, there's the lighting, there's, usually security in place. There are costs associated with this. It's foolish to think that you're just going to get donations, the way we had to. It's an urgent problem.
Yeah.
We used to, when we only need microphones, and then to record it versus being live interactive, it was definitely less expensive. We had a budget that we set that worked, but it also allowed us to go to places like the downtown boathouse, which has no Wi-Fi, but we had a microphone and sound, and it was fine. Now that can't work, because they would love for us to come back to be able to support them. It's just, I think the technology is not there. We benefited because I'm an event planner, So by training and trade, so I helped choose locations and do the vetting for a long while. But Lucy probably knows every location in our district because I mean, the office had to go check it out.
Yeah.
A couple days in advance.
Okay. I appreciate all this. I'll continue to talk to the team about other ways that we can provide support and continue to make the push. So thank you. And thanks, Marquise, for your report. Xavier?
Great. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. Maybe get a good morning around the table.
Good morning.
Sorry, I had to be all smiles. School drop off this morning, so want to say thank you for everyone's understanding. Last month I had to deal with the emergency. To your point, we have rejiggered up all of our chairs except for two, mainly because we actually had some members resign that we were going to actually put in place to deepen the bench of leadership and expertise. It's very important for us, especially realizing the term limits. We've seen just an absolute exodus. Is no other way to describe it. There are only maybe 8 of us who have the institutional knowledge, and we had a real heart-to-heart after this past 6 months that we realized this has to get passed on and quickly. I think next year we're going to have people start cycling off, and that's very scary for us because there's a lot of development. We had the 2017 rezoning that took place, and we're still having much difficulty with pushing those agreements with, say, Department of Sanitation, with the consolidated garage. And I brought that up before with others, that we've had resistance from sanitation. And oftentimes what you've seen in each of your districts, but especially East Harlem, is that when something is temporary, it often becomes permanent. There's always an excuse for why. We have been going through our budget consultations. We finally met with Councilmember Salam, who the last time we had one with that district office was when Inez was there, who I actually saw last night. And he's had to have his team wrap, their heads around this part of the process and what we can align on. One of those issues was the sanitation garage, because it includes 10 as 11. One of the locations we had identified is an acre lot right next to the FDNY training. George Janes, our land use consultant, had actually gave a whole presentation on it, and it's doable. Sanitation just doesn't want to have to cross the tri-borough, even though that you've seen in major modern cities that when trucks roll out, it's usually around 4 or 5 a.m. They could easily just put blockades out, lead them right into the city, and blockades to bring them right back in direct line. You see this throughout San Francisco, major metropolitan areas in Europe. Still some resistance, but we're going to keep fighting that good fight. And a lot will be determined by what happens with the council elections next year. Who's going to pick up that torch with us? Last night we said goodbye to Deputy Inspector Masonette from the 25th Precinct. If you don't know who he is, you should. He's Army. They won't disclose what's going to happen in his next assignment, but he has been crucial in lowering our crime in the area, especially violent crime. Since he landed, was it almost 2 years ago? Things have ticked downward about being present, front facing, also working with the community. And that was, we honored him last night at the Community Precinct Council meeting. That was a nice, more felicitous event, even though what's good about goodbye when someone's leaving. We did not get our statement of district needs and budget meeting done last night. Didn't have quorum. I'm not sure if any of you all are still experiencing quorum issues. We will be meeting next Monday to finish that up as well as executive, and then voting on it full board at the end of the month. To the substance abuse issues, Marquise, thank you for bringing that up. That is something we're constantly facing. Mount Sinai, CCHP, Comprehensive Center for Health Practice, are the only two that have provided data on their recovery rates. All the others have withheld their data from us, despite even Congressman Espiott's trying to put pressure on that and call for a hearing. The Mount Sinai has been great in participating, has been very open about what they look at as a recovery track. In fact, several of their patients have gone from methadone use to buprenorphine to then being completely clean. And he's had a lot of success in about identifying not just the psychological impacts that have led to substance abuse, because as we know, mental health, psychological trauma from your past often is used as escapism. But they've been able to identify and find a purpose for many of them that are in the recovery track. So CCHP is also leaning into that category as well. But the big thing that we ask for in our district is disclosure. just being an honest partner, and the other, I think we have 12 or 13 have withheld their data or are not engaged. So that's a real problem. So Marquise, any way we can continue to partner, because as we know, in Upper Manhattan, 9, 10, 11, and 12, we probably have the highest concentration despite not having the highest need. And as you recall, several years ago, when the DOH, MH released their stats of overdoses, the highest overdose rate was in CD1 in the Bronx, followed by Staten Island. And that was a huge issue when it came to On Point being open under what I would say were very stressful and tenuous times and without community engagement from the former administration. So, and we've been asking them to provide their data, and they're withholding it as well. So I just want to make sure that everyone knows that we are still chasing that down. A lot of other issues going on. We are engaging with a NYCHA tour. So all of our developments and getting the board members, especially the new ones, plugged in. My dad grew up in Millbrook houses in the South Bronx. Best friends from Johnson. Many of the TA presidents there are very switched on about it. They like the idea of some people coming to tour not just the campuses to see what is in need, both from a financial point of view and capital point of view, but also see what people are living for, on a day-to-day basis, whether it's the scaffolding, whether it is the trash, whether it is the conditions in their apartment. And they said, please get it arranged. And we will walk you into several apartments of people. And again, I've seen firsthand, but it's important for these other 49 members to witness what the other half of New York is dealing with. And one of our greatest resources that is led for upward mobility, that we need to reinvest in it so people can actually climb the rungs and stay in our communities. That is being led by Adam Brija, who was once our license and permits chair. He has now created 2 working groups to that end. We have found that's been very successful. Working groups, go away, do your homework, bring it back, and wait for it. You don't have to just show up, and that's when you do the work. That's important. And I've encouraged all of our members to engage more in the conference calls, get on the Zoom, talk through everything, do your research. The other requirement we've done with all of our board members is each member needs to attend at least 2 events per year. If they can do 1 a quarter, that's even better. And that chairs need to be more present. And that will be, we have a chair's roles and responsibility. That's what we will be measuring people by and their productivity. And that's very important because they have to have those benchmarks, and being front and center, it shouldn't be the chair and vice chair of the board constantly out. It should be everyone, because that's how we sew this community back together. There are a bunch of other issues I did not get to. Hold on just a second, all my notes. Thank you. Also too, when I've been able to attend the Columbia University events, which are scheduled like when I have standing meetings, but another issue we're facing there, and please, you have our support from CB11 and that pursuit. We have the 2nd Avenue subway, phase 2. Yeah.
Really?
Something else to talk to the therapist about, thank you.
I'm just getting over my PTSD now.
Yeah. Well, they've learned a lot, but they also too, I've been very boots on the ground. Franklin Plaza, we had our first meeting with the Station Stop working group at 106th Street. Literally that same day in the evening, there was an issue where they blocked off the crosswalks for those at Franklin Plaza. Franklin Plaza has a high senior population, and they couldn't get across. And then one of the erected walls fell over. And there was no response from the contractor. And this is just removing all your mechanicals, your electrics and whatnot. So this is something we are going to be fighting tooth and nail. So you and I probably have some whinging moments.
Just as long as you have your cell phone and taking a lot of photos of everything. you see.
Actually, I got a better one for you. What we did with a contractor and DOB was one of the board members was on Zoom live in the meeting. And the contractor was saying, oh, no, it's not like that. And he's live standing on the street showing what the live conditions are, and it now lives on our YouTube, watching people almost get run over because all the things that we asked that they said, no, that's not actually how it works. We know better. He's standing on the street with people who cannot see cars coming because of how they blocked off the street lane. And it's live through the entire meeting. You can see it. So I'm telling you, it's not even about the cell phone video. You get a board member who's standing there and just live streaming. It's incredibly effective.
I love the idea. We have several, Leslie Colon, who sits on our 2nd Avenue Subway Task Force. She was sending videos and pictures as this was going on.
Yep.
Luckily, the MTA has hired several locals, Hector Santana, who's soon, it's like throwing up the bat signal, he's on top of it, and we were able to get results right away. But the bigger thing is to prevent this from happening in the first place. So they realize, they can see it's, before it happens. That again, we just had our first meeting. We are having issues with congestion pricing. I know that is a hot button issue. I still think, and our board's position so far is it doesn't matter. Congestion pricing never should have been part of the calculation. This is nearly a century in the making, fourth generation, now fifth generation, that this should just be built. And it is up for the MTA to find those funds. What was also expressed during that meeting is that the MTA is having difficulty balancing the book with fare evasion as well, which we've seen those reports, and that's a reality that we see every single day. It has a long-term impact, and I ask all of us as chairs and leaders is to look at the long-term impact, because we're one of the few nations, few cities where you can pay your subway fare and literally go from one end of the city to the other. I have lived in London and I have lived in Tokyo, and it does not work that way. And so you have the zones, and there are other cities like that, and that typically affects those in the lower socioeconomic brackets. For us to make it fair for everyone, then we have to make sure that we're being fair across the board. And I would encourage everyone to say, hey, let's do the principled and right thing. Because there are programs that we roll out to our community when they're looking to have a reduction in cost for the subway fare. We engage with those. So it's really about a change overall for our community. And the last thing I'm going to leave you with, the HERC. We all know about the HERC, yes? Okay. Finally, an announcement with Randall Islands Park Alliance. I couldn't go public while it was midstream negotiation. They are due to take it down in February, which we're very pleased. We'll get those fields back. And that's significant value add for our community that has had loss of those resources. Many of the parents have come to me like, how do I get access? Our kids are being hunted out, no pun intended. The bigger concern is as we restore is not just to bring it back to its previous state, but to the current standard model, which we're fighting for, and also to get some improvements. Because again, once it's open and once you're in the restoration state, that's when you can make those improvements. So we are advocating for that, and also to find out how they're going to address the residual of encampments that have been there. And there've been a lot of issues, as you've seen reported in the news.
One question about your tour of the Housing Authority properties. Is that an evening tour or is it a daytime tour?
We are looking at whatever is accessible that the TA president or their leadership can join us, and whoever they have to volunteer and open up
Right,
their
it's
doors.
just our members we would love to have, and many of them obviously can't do a daytime.
I'd ideally like weekends where people
I
can
see.
just pop off. We did our parks tours.
Yeah.
And would tour every single garden, community garden, park. That was done on Saturdays, usually around 10 a.m. and we were done by noon.
Got it.
So that is something we're looking forward to. And one more thing. Communication. I just want to put this out here because our community has been quite divided. And I fancy myself a very, I like the adage, be strong enough to be kind, but stand by your principles. And we have found that there have been two sides of discussions in our district. The NIMBY, the othering, these praise jumps the shark as far as I'm concerned. The spoken and written word is imperfect. We will err, but is the most inexhaustible resource we have. And we have to be patient with one another. We have found that people will try to cancel and try to say, oh, you are being this or you are being that. And therefore they put up walls from discussion and will sit in their opinion without the discomfort of thought. And that is a problem. And it's not just here, it is nationwide. We cannot lean in and break bread anymore. That's something that for me, I've implored all of our board members, rather than get offended, because your offense is not that person's responsibility. Your outreach is to say to them, could you say it a different way? I'm not understanding you. And for those that remember the great film 40-Year-Old Virgin with Kevin Hart saying, I'm not understanding the words coming out of your mouth, I'm going to take offense. Sometimes we distill it better. We say it better. So that way we can connect with one another and feel one another. And I've challenged all of our board members. Don't go on feelings. Look at the facts. be patient with one another. And by all means, don't shut down the conversation. Don't shut down the conversation from the public who we've invited in. We're all imperfect, but we can achieve a more perfect community by leaning in. And so that's something I've shared with our board members, and I hope we can be that change throughout our city. So thank you.
Thanks for that.
Enough off of my soapbox.
That'd be a great new board member training.
Huh?
That would be a great new board member training with more of those kinds of words that are a slight bit different, that fit the community board negotiation model.
Mhm.
That get people out of their, well, you're a bike person, you're a car person. I mean, those labels just don't help.
And
Or even a borough president like selection process, like in the screenings and interviews to be able to sort of get past that, I think might actually be.
This would be really great as part of that leadership, you know, in the sense of to have people who also facilitate conversations and the sense of you're not just directing it one way, but you're, you know, trying to bring people in and yet being prepared to say, wait a minute, you know, I think there may be something that we need to express in other ways. Yeah, because leaders really have to be very actively engaged.
yeah, I appreciate that feedback. Thank you, Xavier. I checked, we don't have Catherine with us, so Tammy, I will pass it.
Awesome. Thanks very much and good morning, everybody. So 5G towers are on the top of our list this month. We got notification we became a consulting party, so we will at least get notification of them. We're very, very concerned about why we're adding 5G towers that are sort of 7-story monstrosities versus being attached to existing infrastructure. I won't even go into the discussion of close to SHPO, historic districts, near SHPO. I mean, it's really just incredible. We wanted to thank the Borough President's Office for his letter and asking that what kind of steps can the Borough President take based on his letter to get more action? Because it's really confusing to us if 90% of the out is supposed to be in communities of need. And they're gonna be, I understand that they have a right to put up to 4,000 out in the city. That doesn't mean that you should be looking in the 10% zone first. But it is all about advertising and money and real estate. It is not about actually providing the service, although the service will come with it. I challenge anyone to tell me that the financial district doesn't have 5G. Same. And then the other thing is, we're sending a letter to the SCC because there's no environmental assessment that they've done in a flood zone. So for example, one of the 5G towers that they're proposing, not only is it in the flood zone, but it's also in the location that will be completely torn apart and ripped up by the Battery Park City resiliency plan. So, and they've had no dialogue, no conversation, no even thought process that it's a flood zone. So we're trying to really have a robust dialogue on all of it, and it doesn't seem to be moving. So we really would love the Borough President. We cheered for his letter. We sent a letter to EDC about the Battery Maritime building, which ended up in the local paper as well. We've been working since it reopened in 2022. We were very hopeful that that historic landmark, which was supposed to have a public aspect and access, would actually, in public free programming, would do the things that they said they would do. It's an amazing private club. It's a private hotel. And they keep coming back to the community board asking for more liquor license things and other approvals. And the public aspect that has been promised has never materialized. So you can go by there on any day and there's a lovely security card downstairs. And I guarantee none of us are going to get in. If you say, can I go use the bathroom? They will send you to a public restroom over by Staten Island. So it's not working for us. And we're very concerned because there are lots of other conversations that EDC has about how to rehab old existing landmarks. But if it's a historic landmark on the National Register, it's supposed to have public access. I mean, it's the law. So they did an agreement. We're just still fighting, and it's frustrating 2 years later. absolutely nothing's changed, and we copied everybody on that. We have a meeting tonight about next week rather, about the resiliency going along the east side and changes that are looking to be made. If anybody's interested in the maritime uses on the east side of Lower Manhattan, they're interested in the changes, the addition and infill into the East River that they're looking at, everything from economic opportunities to pathways to parkland to existing structures, please, we'd love to have you participate. And then cannabis. I'm going to be a little short on my cannabis conversation today because I want to keep it short. We just, for content, we follow what's going on. We didn't do a working group for cannabis because we just didn't have the bandwidth to have another working group. But we have a couple really amazing board members who are sort of leading the charge. They are tasked with being a working group who follows it and reports back to the board. So we did a resolution because the 1,000-foot rule, OCM and CCB passed a resolution in September to change. Meaning that they would provide waivers. And so what are the lists for what the waivers are? Anything that the applicant suggests, they will consider. There are no definite metrics or accountability on it. So we did a resolution based on their resolution. We're waiting for the public comment period, which they put out in the newsletter. There's a public comment period. The public comment period hasn't started. Then the resolution was changed after the meeting, and the titles and everything were changed. So it no longer said 1,000-foot waiver. And at the bottom of it all, in the fine print, there is a change to the community board's way of engaging on these topics. But there's already a law and a rule, so how can you change the laws and rules? And yet we wait for the 60-day comment period still. So I'm sitting here now, 3 weeks later, saying we have a problem with the way the state agency is operating. And there doesn't seem to be any accountability. I know that if you're a city agency and you pass a rule, you have to do the public comment period. And when you pass the rule, the public comment period has to show all the changes that were made in the rules. And you can't change it from point A to point B. There just seems to be so much change. We need clear definitions. You can't base a legal cannabis store on the illegal ones that were there, which is one of the qualifications. That they would provide a waiver based on any number of illegal stores that existed then or now. I don't know anywhere in New York City that you can open a liquor store or a bar because there have been illegal ones there. You know, it's almost incentivizing the illegal ones. It's just, there's a very bizarre loop there. So we'd love to see what are the economic considerations, you know, that they mentioned. What does that mean? What does it mean that you're using the number or locations of illegal stores to determine a legal store? This makes no sense to us. So we'd love some help on that. And then I think everybody knows that we have DHS is trying to open up a shelter attached to the Peck Slip School. It's a pre-K to 5. They share a wall, and all the windows on the south side of the shelter, or that face the shelter, face into the school, and it's a safe haven. So the community's still outraged. We're not getting the information that we requested. We asked for the statistics from DHS to show us what homelessness looked like beyond the safe haven model. Like, have we fixed homeless families? Have we fixed homeless women? Have we fixed homeless vets? What kind of shelter could that have been other than a safe haven attached to a school? Because it doesn't make any sense. There didn't seem to be any kind of robust citing and information on it. When they came to us last month, they brought us only what they wanted to show us for the safe haven, that there are 400 individuals. Well, we have a safe haven that opened a week later that's brand new, and there's no calculations in what they brought us that says you know, we anticipate this will, and it, the data almost looked like there were no safe havens south of 14th Street. Well, I know there are several, so it's a large question of how they're cited.
Yeah.
And what we're doing. And even when you do cite a safe haven, let's be realistic, most of the communities in lower Manhattan, if you have a safe haven, where do people go from shelter? If, even if you're in a family shelter, if you've devised a way to get people off the street and they develop ties to a community, their favorite coffee shop, wherever it is, there's no affordable housing, low-income housing in CB1 that people can actually try and get placed to. So you're looking at a system that's very, very, very broken. Drops won't help. But if you don't build a way to get people to stay in a community, remain in a community, we're not solving an 80-20 housing doesn't do anything. And so we see that if the city was requiring shelters under the last administration in every community, we think that the city should be requiring affordable housing as a next step in every community, requiring, not offsiting it, but providing socioeconomically diverse housing. And that way we can actually help people in the long term. And when you're going to cite a shelter, you have to not look at it as a city and a public benefit. You have to look more than the real estate you have on the four walls. If you're going to cite something next to a school, you should know, does that school have crossing guards? Does that school have school safety agents, which are both in short supply? If the city isn't doing that kind of an environmental assessment to protect not only the people who need the services in the shelter, but the kids who are going to the schools, then we have a sort of a broken citing system that could use some really good holistic looks at. So you don't have pitting DOE against DSS, and you're not going to have one agency say one bad thing to the other, but maybe having a partnership. So when you're going to cite something like a shelter, a safe haven specifically, which is the most dangerous, that you take a look and say, wow, maybe the school crossing guard that's been missing could be reset. Maybe because they have a street playground, we should have security there. I mean, I'm not the smartest person in the room. I just think that when you keep looking in silos, then you're not solving the public benefit. You're basically paying whack-a-mole.
And with that,
And we are working on our committees. We are working on our leadership. The only way I could do it, because people were panicked about being leaders and not ready, I'm not ready, is, although it's driving the office crazy, a lot of our committees right now have a chair and two co-chairs. And what we're doing is getting the co-chairs trained, one co-chair training the other, and then flipping it up so the current chair drops to co-chair to help push and support. Because
We've done that.
that's our only way of trying to get where we're going.
Yeah.
And I got, you know, and we're redoing our website, so thank you all for your websites. We we've been looking at every one of them.
And back to the 5G, we had some very organized opposition from outside our district. They
Yeah.
spent 15 minutes of our full board telling us why 5G was dangerous and bad for you.
Yep.
Yeah.
All of the locations actually passed. People, it was just not an issue for people in my district, but it was extremely well organized.
And from what we understand, and from Mark's letter, there's no environmental assessment or impact that's looked at anymore. It's deemed safe. So the people who came and presented to us about that, the only tag that the community boards have is whether or not it's close to a historic district, historic building. But when they came to present, they actually didn't, they took pictures of the location. You can see the historic area, but they didn't put in the proposed tower in the picture. So you can't actually see what it looks like. So we had an ingenious board member who went and actually added one to a lot of them. So a couple we got turned down because they went through the efforts, but I don't have board members who have the time necessarily to be running around and
Yeah.
mocking up what the agency should have sent.
Yep, can I just say, like, this has been an issue in our board for over a year and a half now because of our, Carnegie Hill and the historic districts. And they don't work. You can't just knock out one tower because they have to be so close to each other to work. So if you're against one tower, you're against really all of them, because if you take one out of the mix, they have to be very close to one another in order to work. So I really don't see how this plan ever came into being, because it just it strategically doesn't work. And the only people who are getting the benefit of it are the 5 wireless companies who are being housed in it. And, the people that it's been,
And those
pumped up, I
collecting
hate to use that word,
the-
to hell, are not
This-
getting any service.
The city's collecting advertising revenue. It's.
Well, I know, but I will just put it bluntly, the people in my neighborhood are tired of having their eyeballs sold for free.
Mhm.
Quite frankly, everybody, that's how they come to the meetings and that's how they describe it. Once again, whether it's a bus shelter and all the ads that go with that, which we've asked for data, because we understand that bus shelters in our neighborhood are worth more money to the city than anywhere else. And we just fought unsuccessfully to have no more bus shelters on Madison Avenue because the sidewalks are narrow and the bus shelters are really unnecessary, and all it is eyeballs. And it's the same thing with the newsstands that never open. All of this is being taken up on the sidewalk, and it's just pure advertising revenue. And it's if it's not 5G, it's another thing, but there's no response in how much money the city is making off of eyeballs.
No,
I'll jump in really very quickly. I want to respond to your question. So, if we can bring up a letter, we got this pretty early. For those of you who haven't seen it, it included talking about design changes we wanted to see, pausing generally on the entire program. It also talked, and I think probably the most important issue here, about the franchise agreement that the city entered into with Link. That is actually the document that is governing most of the things that's happening right now. It's a document that was agreed upon, I think, in 2021. It is a very difficult thing to change. The city has no interest in doing it. Providers. One of the things that we have been trying to do is get the providers to actually show part of the franchise agreement was allowing for Verizon, AT&T, Spectrum, et cetera, to not actually have to participate in this. All they have to do is say, we are interested in that location on this corner. And then Lincoln, MIC, and DOT, or sorry, do it, does the rest of it. They try to get it approved, put it built. If we can get Verizon to actually show that there's a need, the way to get AT&T to actually show there's a need, that becomes a little bit of a different conversation. Right now, we don't even have that amount of information. It would be very helpful if, as you are hearing from the city, as you're having these conversations, if you can also elevate that spectrum, ask, where is Spectrum in these conversations? Where is Verizon? They're the ones benefiting from this the most, but we never hear from them. They have no interest. We need active engagement on that if we can get it. And we're still saying we are. It is very difficult for this office to actually force that to happen. It really has to be a political push that we're doing in City Hall, but also helps with people saying, why is this franchise agreement essentially handcuffing this off?
thank you, Chris. Susan, I know you wanted to add something. I was actually gonna pass it over.
Oh,
to you
that's
for your-
okay. Well, it's sort of a natural transition because we are, CB2 is a consulting party, so we have been getting these notices, and I will tell you, it is like whack-a-mole. Because we have so many historic districts, the placements is always being challenged, and it's like, even when there's a successful pushback, and it's like, yes, it will not be cited here. It just moved to another location, which has the same problems. And it's
Or
like,
across the
there's,
street.
and it's across the street where it's like, this, you know, logically, you'd say, why would they do that? It's almost as though they're trying to wear us down, and the only people who are benefiting from this are the community members themselves, you feel like you're constantly being used. You're just an opportunity. It's you know, it's like there is no public space anymore unless, if somebody's always trying to make a buck off of it. And it's not going into the hands of people. And again, it's not going into the communities that need it. This has been, you know, I don't know, it's never ending. We thought we had sort of gotten to a point where they recognize that, yes, it's not appropriate, doesn't meet, it's not allowed in certain places, but no, there's just a new round, never stops. But that's enough on that. In terms of I think this time around, in terms of our budget priorities and district needs, I think we are putting a lot more effort into getting each committee to look at it independently instead of it just being something that we sort of come together at our executive committee and push through. I think there's a recognition that, you know, you've got to ID things discreetly if you want money put behind it, if you want attention paid to it. So last month and this month, we've had our committees that, like, they practically all have had this on their agendas. And then what we assemble at executive will be, I think, a much more detailed and updated, you know, set of requests. We have had a lot of, let's see, this month we had a very lively 6th precinct community meeting. We had great turnout from our elected city and state. It was really dedicated to the issue of drug use, drug dealing. You know, unfortunately, this has been, it's labeled a quality of life issue, but it is transforming into something beyond. It is not about simply people being on the street. It is about residents literally being afraid for their physical safety, and being unable to access their homes. And it's really worrying me because I'm concerned that people will start not relying on law enforcement to take care of things, but things might deteriorate and people will feel like they have to defend themselves, they have to defend their homes. I have great respect for the electeds who represent my community, but I didn't think that they were really listening to the level of fear that was being expressed by members of the community. People who are worried about their children, literally. And striking that balance, there was a lot of, you know, discussion of the discovery reform and the bail reform. But people who are then saying, it's like, okay, we supported this, but it's like now it's gone to the other extreme. And now the law-abiding citizens are the ones who are at risk. It's a challenge. But it was good to see that at least our electeds showed up and listened. We had another really successful forum. This involved the Tony D'Appolito Center, which is the rec center that serves the West Village. It is a contributing building in historic district. It is treasured. Unfortunately, it has also been closed for several years. We have been without a facility of any kind. In July, we had what was supposed to be a presentation by both Department of Parks and HPD about updates to a status update. And for the first time, we were informed that they're seriously contemplating demolition, something that had never been on the table before. And it is, of course, there was tremendous outrage, and why are we not attempting to simply restore the facility that we have? It is true, the board has also supported a new facility at 388 Hudson, which is that building that's supposed to be 100% affordable housing. But we had never supported demolition. And it is something that was, however, our support for one was interpreted as support for the other, which was untrue. So we had end of September, a really effective forum. We had over 120 members of the community come out and register to attend the event. We had presentation, we invited parks to come. They have not, they have promised us they will by the end of the year, whatever that means. But we did have Village Preservation give us a presentation and sort of educate people on what it means to have, when you have a building in a historic district, the presumption is that the building must be preserved. And there's a lot of concern that this building is being pushed into a category that it will be demolished just due to neglect. There's also concern that this property has to remain public property. And we do not have, while we do have, this discussion of demolition, there's nothing that follows that. It's like unless something is of imminent danger, if you demolish it, it's because you have something that you plan to put in its place. And there's no indication to us of what, there's no.
Can we talk borough-based jail? No
Yeah.
plan yet?
Yeah, and so it's, we keep asking, it's the whole reason for, we kept getting told it's still under evaluation, it's still under remediation, and then all of a sudden the conversation changed. It's this lack of transparency that really harms the relationships that, we have with the city agencies, and it really makes you feel like, we're the poor stepchild. But we keep going. Other things, nothing more, no, I don't need to go through some more of these other smaller, less intense things. I just want to let everybody know that on Halloween, the 34th annual Children's Halloween Parade, CB2 co-sponsors this with NYU. It is a wonderful event. It's a parade around Washington Square Park. There are free games and goodies. I was a Grand Marshal last year, and it is a lot of fun. It's a great family-oriented event, so I just wanted to extend the invitation if you are so inclined, 3 to 6 p.m. on the 31st. That's it.
Thank you, Susan. Appreciate it. I might get my daughter down there. I know we'll pass it to CB3 beforehand, just because I know some folks have some commitments that they need to run to. If we can try to keep the reports a little brief.
You got it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No worries. I'll try and keep it brief, high level, lots of affairs happening in the district, in CB3. We did a walkthrough since I last saw you all, or since last Borough Board meeting, with our NST group, the neighborhood support team. Over the past months, we've been doing surveys of providers, gardeners, PEP officers. Similarly, we have a lot of difficulty getting accountability from agencies, and we're relying on the NST to support us through that. In our walkthrough a few weeks ago, we found, we worked on a lot of different issues with more than 6 agencies that were there. This is at Sarah D. Roosevelt Park. We're working on getting upgrades in lightings. We've gotten upgrades to different kinds of signage throughout the park, the needle kiosks that weren't super clear, a more detailed outreach schedule with the providers. And we also made it known to everybody there that the biggest issue is a lot of folks experiencing homelessness are refusing double room shelters. So we really drove that home, that we really need single room shelters. Dealing with a kind of conundrum and complex issue at Pier 36 for a while now. That's the pier where there's a lot of like boats coming in for recreational purposes. And it's like adjacent to the new park. It's not really an area that's kind of that the residents are used to having a lot of traffic and influx of people attending events, so it's created some issues with, you know, just noise and traffic, sanitation, that sort of thing. We've been working with EDC for some time to try and get some commitments with Basketball City and some of the operators there to kind of just cohere things a little bit better. But you know, all this came to a head last month at during a SLA meeting when we were approving we ended up not approving a beer and wine license for one of the boats. There's a lot of kind of tension there as to like what we can really do, right? And so the community felt like our stipulations just weren't enough. And there was really, really concerted outreach and efforts to all of our members to deny the license. And so we took that back to EDC, and we're gonna have them come back to parks to talk about some of the commitments that they're doing. So this is kind of an ongoing issue I just wanted to bring up.
Is,
To you all. Yeah.
do you mind saying, is it all the boats off of Pier 36?
I mean, the concern is mostly with anything that has like drinking involved with.
So we should
I
touch
think they
base
don't want
because I'm looking for EDC to have a constituent complaint form, working with Doc NYC.
Okay.
Because the boats leave 36, come around the bottom of the island and they've been hugging the shoreline. So you hear the drum bass really clear as they come up and down the west side. At midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, before they
Okay.
get back to where 36 is.
Okay, I don't remember hearing about that in our meeting, so yeah.
I'm sure you
Definitely
did,
top.
but yeah. So, because
Mhm.
we did a separate outreach to EDC and Doc NYC, knowing it's not our CB. What is the constituent complaint? Like, do you file a 311?
Yeah,
You know, it shouldn't be the community board that tells the public how to file a complaint
yeah,
for a boat on the water because you can't call the Coast Guard. and stuff.
yeah,
So they need to do that. I'm happy to.
right, okay, we'll do that. I'm interested in the housing finance training because we had a exciting presentation about a supportive housing project on 13th and Avenue D. It's gonna include 500 units of supportive housing. And we're all really thrilled about it. Our only complaint is how long the financing is gonna take. It's gonna go many years into the future. So we'd love to look at ways to streamline some of that so we can get this done in our community board sooner. Our office is working really hard for months now, also with support of Councilmember Rivera's office to get bike corrals on 11th Street and 2nd Avenue outside of Amos where a lot of deliveries congregate. So if we can get that done by the end of the year, really be thrilled. Similar to all of you all also, we are collating our budget priorities. We held a hearing this month and we're finishing that tonight and gonna vote on it next week, sorry. We also have elections next month, so I convened a nominating committee last month. And then lastly, I'm sure you all have seen the headlines about the Market Line. It closed some months ago. Our land use committee voted this was a couple weeks ago, voted to ask EDC to acquire the Market Line space. There's been a lot of concern about the new tenant being like a big box retail or a grocery store. There's already a grocery store like sort of adjacent to the area that's opening. And so there's a lot of concern over competitiveness with some of the smaller merchants. So even if we can get like reclaim half of the market line for like small merchants, we would see that as a good thing. But again, we're gonna vote on that next week, so more soon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So
That's two,
four.
three, four, yeah.
Okay, so we, much like every other board, do have elections coming up in November. Our nominating committee is convening next week to review and interview the various candidates and make recommendations. Next week is also the final hearing for what our budget task force. The way that we conduct our process is we have the committees wind up making recommendations to the statement of district needs. They review the priorities and then we collate them with this task force and then review the narrative together. So we will undergo that process next week and then we will vote on that at the November full board. One thing, I think we've called out a little bit, the transition process, and I did want to call out something that Manhattan Community Board 4 has been doing it with our previous chair as well as our current chair over the past 2 years. We have a co-chair system for our committees, and we have been pairing a more experienced co-chair with a younger or less experienced co-chair who and you know, kind of focusing on the term limit cycles. And we found that that has been actually very effective and creating new leadership opportunities. And so would recommend that if that is something of consideration to anyone here. We offered testimony in the Port Authority Bus Terminal project here, the CPC hearing, and it is now going to the CPC for a vote. There's a lot of community concern just because of the large nature of the project, that it will be, the mitigation measures will ultimately take place. And we really look to our elected officials to help make sure that those mitigations are happening, both for people who live in the area, but also the very sizable number of people who work there as well. And then finally, on October 26th, Manhattan Community 4 is organizing a coat drive at Metro Baptist Church on 41st Street. And we welcome the donation of lightly used coats and other outerwear, winter wear. And if we also, you know, we have volunteers, but we'll be distributing the coats between 3 and 5 p.m. that day.
Thank you so much. Todd, CV5?
Okay, CV5, very quickly. So again, we're facing the challenge of integrating the turnover rate of 40% new membership. That's really been difficult. We had a very successful team building effort. I would urge everybody to take that seriously. It sort of went by the wayside during the COVID years. You know, it was actually at my place. It was 2 hours with food and team building exercise. That's so important to do, especially, you know, strains that we've had at our community board. We do have new chairs and vice chairs in place across all of our critical committees. I think that's going quite well. Even our newest chairs, our experienced chairs, are only 2 or 3 years, you know, on the board. So it's been a challenge. You know, I'm the vice chair. I'm probably the senior person. I've got 9 years experience, God help, right? But, you know, everybody is doing their best. You know, the obsession on single issue votes is sort of in the rearview mirror. I think our new members are finding out that a lot of the day-to-day work in the community board doesn't relate to single issue votes. And people are beginning to work together, you know, and build the expertise they need. So that's all to the positive. A big issue in our district, of course, has been because our district, along with some of our neighboring districts, we've got more restaurants and dining establishment and bars than anybody in the city. We're seeing a flood of licenses for curbside and sidewalk cafes. So we actually have been successful in implementing what I think. I was on the task force that helped survey this issue over the last 4 years. We have a very good process in place where we have materials that we give to our CB SLAP committee members. They go on site, They fill out an online questionnaire. It comes before the committee. We have basically like a flow chart that feeds right into the DOT applications. And I think we're doing a good job. It continues to be a challenge, as I mentioned to Eric, we need more manpower. I personally, philosophically, I think our committee is trying to fill in the gaps where the DOT and its method of granting licenses, sort of has a blind spot. That is the holistic overall impact of granting the licenses on the sidewalks and streets. They tend not to do that so much. And we've made a point of commenting about that. So for example, on 25th Street between 5th and 6th, they granted 5 licenses for curbside cafes and three licenses for sidewalk cafes, all on the west end of the block. And that makes absolutely no sense, right? If anybody that's right where my office is. So I immediately commented on that, and we're going to continue to do that. I guess it's gratifying to see that the DOT, when they put this up in their own hearings, and we get another bite at the apple to comment on that. So I urge our fellow community boards to pay attention to that issue and push it as much as you can. I'm just going to second a lot of the concerns and issues related to the 5G towers have come up. We just had at our last full board meeting, all of the issues raised here, had a full discussion. I think I can say that the position of our community board, if CB5, if you look at our resolution, is of extremely skeptical support with conditions. The one thing that came up repeatedly by our committee was, why are they putting two things really? Why are they putting these things here if there's no demonstrated need for them, right? And then of course, CB5 has more than its fair share of historic districts. The concept of these cookie cutter towers, going up, right? It makes no sense. One of the things that some of our board members did is they looked at what the towers look like in Europe and in other cities. And it's amazing what a little bit of imagination can do if they take the time to do it, to try to get these towers to blend in a historic community. So this is an issue, one thing which I did say, I didn't hear that mentioned here, is, I'm very skeptical as a business owner of dealing with the big 5G companies. And, it's not the one issue, and this came up in our discussion at full board with the vendor, is that it's not always an issue of, well, there are 5, vendors and they've already got the towers. It's the small businesses or the entrepreneurial 5G companies that might take advantage of this new capacity, and break the monopoly. Because, in my experience as a small business owner, the choice and the pricing is just awful. It's monopoly pricing. So in assessing, and that was one of the reasons why we gave a qualified approval, because any effort to try to break the monopoly or make, additional capacity where people can put their 5G equipment is something that shouldn't be ruled out. Okay, and that's consistent with Community Board's 5 tradition of, balancing the interests between, the commercial interest and the residential interests. But we'll keep an eye on that. As far as cannabis goes, our big thing there, which I think I mentioned at the last meeting, is we're trying to look at the big picture of, is the enforcement working, and how are they defining the vicinity requirements? Because again, the granting of the license makes no sense, right? A lot of the licenses that are coming up are too near places of worship, harm reduction facilities. And again, there's sort of like a blind spot there. So we're paying very close attention to, where the licenses are being granted. And, we're saving our ammunition and keeping track. We're thinking of we put in a request for an intern to help us create a district-wide map that will allow us to build out our own map of where these licenses are going and how close they are, so we can see the big picture. On the agenda, Penn Station is in our district. Penn Clip Report, which was years in the making, is going to come before our board. So that obviously is a contentious issue. Given the composition of our board, there's going to be some strong debate about that. But I'm confident that at the end of the day, everybody will have their say, and what we come up with or how that report is viewed will be made available to the public and make a substantial contribution to what happens there. I think that's, make sure I hit all my points. Yeah, I think that's a fair summary. Again, I mentioned to Eric, we're at 46 strong. We need 4 more. Right.
Yeah, and I mentioned we were happy to get 2 more who you said are really engaged and interested, and we're waiting on the council members to work on some appointments there too. So thanks. Tammy, I know you wanted to respond to
question
something,
about-
and then I'll pass it to Sandy.
Quick question on your DOT. So what we realized is that the process is very different. So our board members who have been around since Sidewalk Cafe days, we get hand-drawn diagrams from DOT that have passed the DOT muster, but we have discovered aren't actually accurate.
Yes.
So, a fire hydrant is not 2 inches. So we're taking a look and having to educate the board members, and that's my question for you, that this is such a different vehicle for the application process, that the applicant is actually not applying to us, they're going to DOT, and we're only approving what DOT says. DOT said, well, just make your comments. So, and our board is kind of like, we don't want to approve it unless we have the proper information, because it doesn't look right. You have to force public hearing, because if you just say yes, even with comments, the comments aren't considered. So I'm curious if you've dealt with that and how you deal with it.
Okay, so it's a feature, not a bug. When
Yeah.
all of this went through the city council hearing and advisory process, right? It's like one of the things they put in is they didn't want the establishments and the restaurants to be burdened with the cost of having exact drawings, right? So that they could just do it as amateurs. From the very beginning, I thought that was a big mistake, right? And the way we've dealt with it, and this again is personal to me, because I spent so much time in this, right?
Yeah.
Is like, I tell all of the people in the committee.
Well, but shouldn't DOT then be required to take whatever it is? DOT has the Zola, they have access to Zola, so why?
Yes, they should, right?
But they don't.
But they don't. So what the position, what our strategy has been, is I tell our members when they go there, look around, use your common sense, take your own pictures and photographs, and write up, where this fire hydrant or grating or, street light is, let's document it. And then we put it in the comments, and me, it's usually me, because I'm the supposed expert in this. When I go to the comments, right, at the DOT hearing, and to be fair to them, they seem, the ones that we really have big issues with, they do call for hearings, and we do have a chance.
So are you saying yes, or are you saying no?
We basically say, we basically say, yes, but it's like a deny unless, right? That's like basically, that's what we'd like to do.
But there's no opportunity, you can't deny unless.
We can't, but we can, in the comments, we can say, listen, it makes no sense to allow this here, right? Even though it may be, we put in, even though it may be a reputable operator with a good history, who's been here before, yeah, we say we don't think it should be here. So like, at least it's in the record Because remember, they're 4-year licenses, right?
So are you,
This is,
I have to,
I'm just trying to understand if it's a yes
That's all
or
I
a
want
no
to
that
know.
they're doing.
It's
this.
too early to say,
Okay.
right? It's too early to say. But I do feel it's important that we put it in the record.
Yeah,
Second that, totally.
yeah,
thank you. Sandy, I'll pass it to you.
Okay, we have 2 ULIP actions that are making their way through the approval process, and we understand that the EDC has met with the Borough President's office, and hopefully our concerns are being, addressed. Next, it has to pass city planning and also council. The East Side Coastal Resiliency Project is proceeding with the opening of Murphy Brothers Playground. They will be installing restrooms there. They haven't done that yet. We've also been informed that the Department of Environmental Protection will be the one responsible for the wall, the gates, deploying the gates and keeping the graffiti off the wall. Not sure how they're going to do that, but we finished our budget requests and it was passed at full board this month. MSBI, we're optimistic that hopefully it does not close, but we're also looking into what process will happen if it does close and what happens to that property. We passed a resolution to install automatic toilets at Stuyvesant Cove Park. Big need for that in our district. Accountability. We're also having some trouble getting information from other city agencies. And we asked if we can actually foil that information. So it's become a problem. City agencies don't seem to want to come to our meetings because they're at night. So just getting information has been relatively difficult. We have elections next month with only 2 contested positions, and we have open elections. We'll vote at them, and that's it.
Just wanted to, we have foiled DOHMH, and even when you do, they will try to hide and say, we don't have that information. We discovered in this process that they were actually lying. So there's something that with this administration, the agencies from the deputy mayor, it's been very hyper controlled and centralized. The deputy mayors are controlling everything the commissioners do.
So I know you have a question and then I'll pass it over. to
Yeah,
you.
I just missed one point in my thing, just very quickly. The Fifth Avenue, the public realm commissioner made a presentation, and we're going to be sponsoring a public session to solicit comments on the redevelopment of Fifth Avenue to, reimagine it as a public space.
Great.
So that's in the works, report on progress.
All right, thank you for that.
yeah. We had a community advisory board 1 year in meeting on the safe haven that opened on 83rd Street. It is across the street from a school, different from what has been proposed for one, but and it looks like everything is better than we could possibly have hoped for. It's a 96 bed facility. They've placed 33 people in permanent housing, and they have another 15 ready to go with packets just waiting on placement. So we're very pleased with that. We're trying to organize a construction advisory group for the Manhattan Children's Museum, which is moving into the old Christian Science Church on Central Park West, which will be a couple years worth of construction that we hope to monitor and be able to participate in, making sure everything stays sensitive to the community need. We did vote our 3 primary goals for the year. They haven't changed: affordable housing, food insecurity, and K-12 education, and are completing the work on the actual district needs. Have had the same issues that others have had on the sidewalk and street cafes. Our sense is that this is a new component of DOT that has been recently formed. They're understaffed. They do not do due diligence on the reports. We've had many applications that say they're going to stay open till 2 a.m, which is in violation of the law. We've had many that have not provided adequate clearance. And checking that has been difficult. We do find if we can get to them in timely way, which isn't always the case, that if we go back to them and say, can you cure these things? Because otherwise we're going to disapprove and that will trigger a public hearing, that the threat of a public hearing is actually a meaningful threat that they want to avoid, and they've come back to us with corrections, and we've been able to do that. But the timing for that is so sensitive, and obviously the 30 and 40 day limits are really inadequate for doing that consistently. We held our elections at our last full board. And we were happy that we have 3 new members, relatively recent, who have stepped up to our elected positions. The issue we had was with our vice chair position, where 3 ballots in, there was a tie, and the ballot itself was inadequately framed to prevent it being really very clear. We had a sort of technical solution to that that was consistent with our bylaws. We're now into changing the bylaws to make things absolutely much more clear. But also, we need to redesign the ballot. And if any of your districts have ballots you found to be very successful in fraught elections, please let me know, and I'd love to see them. I think the 5G issue is really one we've been by and large spared, except for a couple of sites. We really are, the issue is the need issue, because this whole program is front loading sort of high socioeconomic group areas rather than what it was intended for. And there doesn't seem to be anybody downtown who cares about that. Other than that, I think that's about it. We're we have in our bylaws a requirement to replace chairs and co-chairs after 4 years. That's sort of a bloodless way to ensure that we continue to have sort of a renewal of our leadership and development of it. We've been pairing a more experienced with a less experienced member, but in the coming month or 2, we will be changing out probably most of our really experienced people who've been there a very, very long time, and not sure how that's going to work out, but we'll report back in the coming months. That's it.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it.
Me? Okay, well, I want to start out with something super positive. At the end of September, we had our art fair on one of our closed streets, which some people refer to as an open street, but we refer to it as the closed street. And it was an enormous success. We had over 100 artists, mostly from our community district and elsewhere, displaying their stuff. We had music. We had just literally so many, the crowd was intense all day long. I mean, Mother Nature helped us with beautiful weather. And we had out our little community board aid table. And you have a success when people come by and say, why don't you do this every weekend? And then my next line is, would you like to volunteer and help us? And they're like, no. So it was great. And I just think it's something for other, community boards to think about, because the outreach is really positive, and it's just, we don't make any money from it. It's free for all the artists to come and set up. They get there like super early. We had great cooperation from the neighboring building, from their staff, actually for free to come out and help us set up tables and everything. So it was terrific, I have to say. And we do one outdoors in the fall, and then we have one in the winter that we hold inside a school gymnasium, and that is also really well attended too. So we have a model if you're interested. And we start taking applications like 90 days out. We vet all the artists, and the one we do in the fall is more of a, winter is more of a crafts thing, but it really, really is nice. And we also get donations of food from we had Chick-fil-A give sandwiches to everyone. We had ice cream. It works out very nicely. On a similar note that we've heard, I got a member of the community who sent me an email yesterday telling me that SUS had pulled out of the Welcome Center on 91st Street. I sent a letter in February after almost a 3-hour meeting with DHS and SUS telling us how this was going to happen, because for 4 years now, we were supposed to have a safe haven, and then Goddard pulled out of that. And now we were supposed to have this welcome center, and we spent 2.5 hours talking about it. And now we've sort of heard through the grapevine that SUS has pulled out, so we have no idea what is happening. And it's just, I don't know, it's not transparency. It's just a total lack of respect for what we do as, and we're another city agency. And nobody, quite frankly, gives a poop about what we say or do. And it's kind of hard to make people work as hard as they do, make them, but when they see that, it's, what are we doing here? I mean, there's no accountability, but there's no respect. So it's just very difficult. And I love coming here and hearing everyone, but it's just so super frustrating on so many levels. And I hear it like every day from every committee member. We can't get agencies to come to our meetings because they're at night. Then the people that they send, they're nice people, but they don't really have any information, substantive information about the issues we want to discuss. They don't come prepared for communities that are ready, willing, and able to have serious discussions about things. Yeah, exactly. And they come and they treat us like idiots. And when they feel like we're disrespecting them, the disrespect has already started before they even come into the room, because they're so unprepared. And they're so presentations from DOT about quote unquote temporary projects. Everybody who's in the room knows that it's going to go forward no matter what we say or do. And so it's not a discussion. It's not even an exchange of ideas. It's just a fait accompli, and we all know it. So I'm sorry, after hearing everyone today, I just had to say that. We're well underway with our district needs statement. We have a special budget committee that does most of the heavy lifting on that. We send out our surveys back in the spring. So the feedback that we've actually gotten from the agencies is to be as specific as possible. So we're really honing in on saying, on this corner, we've been asking for a catch basin for 8 years and no one has responded. So this is the kind of tack we're taking now. This way, when it goes to the agency, it's, there's no any general, we need more sanitation and more, we're actually putting in the specific corners and things that we're interested in. So the other thing I want to mention is COIHO. Next week, there will be a public hearing at the city council on the City of Yes housing opportunity. Styled as a 2-day public hearing, but actually just a 1-day public hearing, and that's on the 22nd. First of all, I think I mentioned this in our summer meetings. I think it's outrageous that on a policy that's supposed to change the zoning resolution for the first time in over 50 years, that there's going to be 1 day of public hearing. I mean, we saw that at city planning, that the hearing went till all hours of the morning and people just dropped off. So there wasn't even any real, public commentary. To me, it's outrageous. With a proposed maybe vote in December, but I just think I know we didn't get any notification at our district office about the hearing. We had to find out, because we're all on different lists from basically, to be honest, Paul Graziano telling us, here's the outline of where, I mean, I think everyone around the table knows that he's anti-coho, but these are the places that we have to get our information from because of the lack of transparency from all these different agencies and about what, even the city council, about what's happening.
Are you asking for a borough board resolution that would ask city council to host the hearing for more than one day?
Well, I'm in favor of that if there's a
I'm
motion.
just asking if that was your intention.
Well, I mean, it's part of my intention. I mean, it's also a disrespect again of the city, the people who live in the city of their time to tell you that we have no idea when you're going to speak. That's crazy, Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask a question, maybe to Eddie or to you. I don't know, probably not the appropriate person to ask, but I mean, in the past, I think community boards were treated like agencies. So I wonder if for this, there's a way we could be grouped into the non-public day. I don't know, it's just a thought. I know Eddie probably can't.
The committee staff to see if there's any.
Yeah.
It's a good idea.
Well, actually, what I saw in the notification on the city council website was said that day one was for administration officials specifically. It didn't even just say,
Okay,
I don't know. I mean, I think that's a great idea, but I
thank
think
you. I appreciate it.
And then I think also, Virginia, you should be able to get signed for.
Valerie.
Valerie, I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay.
You should be able to get signed up to hearing notices to your board, just to make sure that you are able to calendar these things.
Well, I don't see why I should have to sign up for anything. I'm the city agency.
You're gonna find out.
Well, because I should be part of the rubric of city agencies, and when it goes out to every other person, every other city official, why do we, I mean, why do we have to sign up as, what is it, partners, consulting partners for 5G towers? This is like,
I'm just sharing that you can get hearing notices when committee hearings are scheduled, sent to your board to help with planning the organization.
well, okay, that's like saying I have to know about the meeting before
No, you just
No.
have to sign up.
Yeah,
But I think when you have a hearing for franchise committee, not even the city council people get notification of every hearing if they're not on the committee. That's, it's only the most important change in this.
Well,
in the
there is
zoning
a way, there
resolution.
is a way to get access, and that's, if your district manager signs up, then he can absolutely, share across the committees that you have.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's
that's
also
relevant.
like a fire hose.
Yeah.
Because if you sign up for one, you get 1,000.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I think of something of this import, it's not something that we should have to find out through other sources.
got it.
As far as our ULURPs are concerned, we're a community district 8, which is also Bedpan Alley. So, we just finished.
We're bad, not you.
Okay, well, we've got 9 hospitals. I don't know how many you have, but.
Monroe, that's why we said.
Okay, so on MSK, we came to a decent compromise. It's not perfect. They're still getting a 600-foot tower. We have gotten, working with our city council person, Julie Menon, about over $9 million of community benefit. We're getting really necessary improvements to the very limited park space we have, specifically, some $4 million of improvements in one of the small parks on the, what I like to describe as the far east side. PS 183 is getting $500,000 for their PTA. In addition to improvements of physical plant and other items. And then during the construction period, there'll be a community task force. We got them to use electronic cranes rather than diesel cranes, which are much more quiet. It's a pretty big package. I mean, people are disappointed in the height, but I don't think that, quite frankly, MSK is sort of a unicorn in terms of their bargaining position. So it worked out as a very nice process. We had almost 5 months of pre-ULURP meetings with them. We're in small discussion group about what the project might look like. And then once they got their certification from city planning approval, and then they came back. We had a resolution with 18 specific items. They addressed every single one of them before we even had the ULIP hearing. And we thought it was a very good model to follow. Now I move to Northwell and Lenox Hill, who, this has been a very contentious project since 2017. It's still in the works, although for the first time, I have to say that head of Lenox Hill, Dan Baker, finally reached out to me 3 weeks ago, and we had coffee yesterday. They're not anywhere near submitting their ULIP, probably till beginning of next year. And we'll see what happens there and see if we can, I don't know what's going to happen there. I really don't. Part of it, I think, is going to be a timing issue. In terms of, what's happening in different areas, who's running for which office and how that impacts, to be honest about it, the positions. And then, of course, we have in my district, just in the last 3 days, 3 more announcements of luxury housing projects that are going to take down the limited affordable housing that we have. So, I get letters constantly, what are you doing about this? I wish there was something we could do, but we are pretty strapped in that regard. On the sheds and the open dining, we have noticed that a lot of our sheds have come down. It's been a real reduction in rat complaints in a lot of the streets. So we definitely see a correlation there. And most of it doesn't look like a lot of our restaurants are going to comply. I think I mentioned that we got an irate letter from one of the attorneys who represents quite a few of the restaurants in our district, saying we were asking for too much. And we had a phone call with him, and he's basically saying what we've heard here, that, this is really between you and the DOT. We don't even have to show up. And I said, well, take your chances. You don't want to show up, that's going to be taken some way by the community if you don't want to show up. We don't want to have to put up notification of a hearing. We don't want to do any of that. I said, okay, well, let's see how that works for you. And the only other thing I would say about DOT is it would be extremely helpful. I think the time period runs from the time that they send us the application. They could be a little bit more strategic when they do that, so that they are aware of when in our case, it's our Street Life Committee, handles these applications. They know when the meetings are. They could wait to give us the full time to do all the analysis that is ongoing. And we've requested that on our own, but I think that should be something that's a little bit more formalized. At least I think, it would help all of us in doing that.
It is not in their interest to do that.
Howard,
Yeah.
okay, the recalcitrant attorney problem in these, I'm an attorney myself, right? The way that I deal with them and the way that I've advised my fellow committee members who are doing the due diligence, if you run into that, what you do, or what I've done, is we go to the owner and principal and bypass those attorneys. They're always trying to justify their fees. And when I say to them, and getting back to your point, I'm so sympathetic about the idea that we don't get any respect, that we're a separate independent branch of government. And I find that that's often quite effective. In other words, if you talk to the owner or the investors and you say, what you're doing is you're ignoring a branch of government and you're making bad neighbors. Don't listen to your attorney. What he's doing is he's taking the most narrow interpretation of the laws and ignoring the spirit, which is that they're supposed to pay attention to us and give us the input. The other thing I would say, this goes back to what I said earlier, is that, we don't get any respect, right? But that doesn't mean we don't have our own resources. We are a legitimate branch of government. We have our own websites. We could use the bully pulpit. And if there's a record of it and we're consistent over a period of time as to our philosophy, then we can make our voice heard. And that goes to the independents. We're not supposed to be responsible to anybody but our constituents and our own consciences.
Thanks, Xavier.
I
I'm
know
see
we
you on the-
gotta rock and roll. You brought up the rats thing and I forgot to mention that, we have had an explosion in East Harlem. In so much that my car was sent to the shop for 2 months because all the wire harnesses were chewed up, because they actually have soy in the
Yes.
plastic sheet that the wires sit in. So that's one of our budget requests, because we were one of those identified districts. But I have a video here that I could send you, over 20 rats in one building. And I've had to shake, so again, so as we take them down, there's been an explosion, so I think the administration is failing on completing the investment. And following through with that, so anyway.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I was just gonna say, City of Yes, our council member reached out to us and specifically asked if we had questions, which I think is great, because I have the feeling they have more impact than we do. So that's potentially a good way to get rid of.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, but I just think that it's, again, disrespectful of every citizen. I mean, we have the same city council persons. We're having meetings with him too, but, you know, I think everybody should have the.
It's a different.
Oh, really? Okay.
Thank you so much, and finally, I'll pass it over to Vic.
Sure, trying to be brief. Just to comment on your rat issue, we still have the containerization program and have seen success with that. One of the problems initially was lack of transparency from sanitation that has improved. We had the commissioner herself come on Zoom and speak to us about it, and we're monitoring. It's supposed to grow in the next few months, so that might be one thing that might back down a little. But I'm familiar with the wires being eaten. District needs, we're looking at probably some of the same things we've looked at in the past: affordable housing, true affordable housing with an AMI of 125,000 and an average income in our district of 50,000. The balance is just not there. It's a real issue. Safety remains an issue, I guess, throughout the city. So we've been looking at that closely, working very close with our 3 precincts in the area, closely to them. And health, looking at, we had a health forum a few months back and started with talking about issues that impacted our district in particular. One being asthma. Asthma rates are very high. Sickle cell. We did a piece just on sickle cell anemia, and that just to bring awareness about that. Also, access to healthcare for seniors in particular. So we're trying to concentrate on those things. Columbia University is a huge issue for us. State Senator Clear introduced a bill a few months back regarding rolling back Columbia's expansion into West Harlem in particular. For the past 5 years, I was the head of strategic planning for Community Board 9, dealing directly with community benefits at Columbia. So I've been sitting in on those meetings and making some progress, trying to get more housing, jobs on the sites themselves. So we're meeting tomorrow, actually, again with Columbia to talk about that. And next week, I'll be meeting with the interim president at Columbia to discuss some of these same issues. We did a second new board member orientation. Some people just didn't seem to get it. That we need people physically there. They show up out of the blue on Zoom, like that doesn't count. We need a quorum to vote, and that's, you know, this is not something you put in a resume and tick off I was on the board. So I've had that discussion with 2 city council members as well. Just be mindful of who you're appointing and that they show up. We have 3 vacancies now, which is not a lot, but still it hurts what we're doing. NYCHA PAC RAD program. We have 3 NYCHA developments in the area. One, Manhattanville, is undergoing that process now. There's a lot of confusion. So I invited the developer, NYCHA, to come to our executive board meeting to really explain it. And some things were a little clearer, but we want to have that ongoing conversation with people. Seniors in particular, they're not understanding the difference between Section 9 and Section 8, what that exactly means, and there's a lot of fear. So we want to do something specifically for seniors so they kind of get it. And then just problem getting people coming out, you know, to to here, and rumors go. So that was one of the things we're gonna keep pushing. Also, we're trying to track supportive housing facilities in our area a lot closer. They just pop up sometime. We see something, we ask, and how did that happen? We didn't come before us. We have, as 10 and 11 also have a huge amount of those within close proximity to each other. And we have one that's going to be across the street from the school. I'm like, who's going to monitor this? Because we try to get parents to come out to speak about this. So we're still looking at that very closely to see what was going to happen with that. We had a rezoning that came before City Council last week on 135th Street, right? They want to cantilever the building over Amtrak railroad tracks, and we had an issue with that as far as if there's an accident or something, how do you get access? Also, there's a gas line that comes from Jersey to New York City that runs right in that area. So we had concerns about accidents, what would happen in case of an accident. It seems to have passed, as far as I remember, or close to passing. They're really pushing it through. But we had real reservations about that. I worked formerly at NYCHA, and we had a building that was over railroad tracks, and plumbing, brick always was a problem. Just the vibration caused problems there. So that's still ongoing. And on a positive note, Morningside Park has a waterfall that was closed since 2018. That reopened 2 weeks ago. They had a ceremony to reopen this waterfall. People were asking about it for quite some time. So it was one of the positive things. Congressman came out, state senator, councilman, and myself spoke at this, and people were just happy. It's a feature. Yeah, as I said at the press conference, the parks in our area, those are our Hamptons or our Martha's Vineyard. People go there, they celebrate. Now the waterfall's back, people are really happy about that. So that's all I have.
Great. Just one question for you. Do you have a recording of the meeting with, I guess it was ELH, it's the management company?
Yes, I do.
Okay, just if you can share that with us, we'll make sure that Sean can send that out to anybody that he has in Manhattanville.
Okay.
So make sure that more residents are getting.
Yeah, we're gonna
all that
do
information.
the seniors. The TA hasn't had a lot of success, but we're gonna do a town hall just for us. You know, I think we'll get more people to come out, but I'll send it to you.
Next month, the borough board is 14th or 21st.
I will confirm that. I just need to take a look at the holiday schedule.
Thank you.
Oh, I do have one more comment.
Yes.
I swear, quick. Thank you very much. We had a vacancy on our board, and we were able to appoint one of our public members who was longtime regular member and then stepped off and came back as a public member, to the point where everyone applauded when I announced it. So thank you very much for that quick
I'm
appointment.
happy that we were able to get her on board.
Yeah.
Public members are like, it's one of the best ways to bring people in. Yeah.
And public.
Yeah,
member-
Raise it up.
Just
We had
public
to
member
fix
that joined CV3 this month.
SLA problem, yeah. Exactly, balanced, yeah.
I will take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
So, thank you all so much. I really appreciate it, and I will follow up with that schedule.
Because we have.
Yeah, we-
Thank you.